Hello and welcome to my channel, I Win to Lose Gaming. Are you tired of abusing local plants to get an idea of your character's DPS? Are you tired of popping recurring zits on this dragon's neck to see how strong your teams are? Well, fret no more. Thanks to the legend of the Vagabond Sword, we actually have something that won't be eviscerated instantly. We have our very first 2 million hit point volunteer, the event Primo Geovishap. In this video, we will be taking a look at how long many popular DPS characters take to do 2 million damage. So let's understand this 2 million hit point challenge. The Primo Geovishap in this event has a modifier that adds an additional 175% of its HP. This puts our volunteer, the local friendly resting giant rock frog's hit points, at around 2 million hit points. There are a couple additional rules to this challenge. The only two modifiers selected are the 120 second timer and 175% HP increase. Food is not allowed. And finally, anything else goes. Barring a couple exceptions, all runs in this video were done within a reasonable amount of time. Admittingly, some runs were attempted more than others, but my general rule of thumb was to spend 30 minutes to an hour on each character. And also, both fortunately and unfortunately, Kazuha was released. I had compiled a lot of clips prior to his release, but I had to revisit a lot of these runs in order to incorporate Kazuha. Next, I will have a couple of guests as well. Given that my account is just my account and I'm only one guy, I don't have all the characters properly built, nor do I have all the time in the world to do these runs. As such, I've enlisted the help of a couple other highly capable whales. Mr. 89 was tremendously helpful in a few of my previous videos using his Xiao, Keqing, Childe, and many others. The second guest we have today is Alyss. Alyss is my go-to resource for Melt Ganyu being overpowered. Do you need Melt Ganyu to be broken and annihilate something? Just ask Alyss. A link to Alyss's channel will be in the description below. Let's start with the most obvious elephant in the room, Eula. We all know how this will go with our local Sneeze Drift Knight. We set up her supports, build up her stacks, and then boom, no more Rock Frog. Except, if you noticed, my Eula wasn't strong enough to one-shot the Primo Geovishap, and my Xinyan had to finish the job. So behold, the power of friendship. Mr. 89's Eula is a tad stronger than mine.
Everybody stand back! Let's spark it. Freeze to the core! Eye for an eye!
With his very slightly stronger Eula burst, he was able to one-shot the Primo Geovishap where I couldn't, thus saving a second or so. This clocks Eula in at a very impressive 13.5 seconds to do 2 million damage.
Eye for an eye!
Next, we have the 77th Funeral Parlor Director, Hu Tao. Can Hu Tao keep up with the Spindrift Knight? Let's find out. 15.6 seconds. That's a remarkable time given that Hu Tao can't build stacks or anything like that for the first 12 seconds. However, Hu Tao's supports can queue up all their stuff. Essentially, Hu Tao did 2 million hit points in around 4 effective seconds. Notably, there is some room for improvement here with some melt proc RNG, but this is a remarkable performance nonetheless. Now for our overpowered secretary of Liyue, Ganyu. Kazuha's release buffed one of the already strongest characters in the game, Ganyu. Let's see how my Ganyu does in this situation. With her charge shots doing around 500,000 damage per volley, it's no surprise to see how fast Ganyu disposed of this 2 million hit point Primo Geovishap. However, this isn't even Ganyu's best time in this situation. Let's instead take a look at Alyss's Ganyu. 16 seconds. This is on par with Hu Tao for single target DPS, which is absolutely insane. Thanks to the silly buffs from Kazuha, with some crit fishing, Ganyu can do around 600,000 damage per E charge shot cycle. MiHoYo, why do you keep buffing Ganyu? So I think we kind of expected this from these three broken characters. With all the crazy multipliers that they have and insane team buffs that their teams provide, it's not surprising to see how quickly they can melt through the competition. But what about the rest of the cast? Let's see how the first featured 5-star DPS character banner, Klee, performs. Klee's team will be focused on raw pyro damage. Out of all the runs in this video, this Klee run is one of the ones that surprised me the most. Even though it pales in comparison to the previous 3 runs, Klee is outputting 88,000 damage charge attack, and Xiangling is no slouch either, and is outputting a very formidable amount of pyro damage. It's no wonder that this team was able to so quickly output 2 million damage in this scenario. Next we have another pyro DPS character, Xiangling. In this run, Xiangling will be supported by Childe. Childe's main role is to act as a burst sub DPS role and to apply copious amounts of hydro for Xiangling's pyronado to vape. With some creative rotationing with Kazuha, I was able to buff both Hydro and Pyro damage, as well as apply Kazuha's Constellation 2 and Freedom Soaring buffs. This leads to some impressive damage from both Childe and Xiangling, netting their team a very respectable 25.4 second clear, only a little bit slower than the previous Pyro only damage team. After this run, we're going to start seeing a pattern. 2 million hit points is actually quite a lot if your characters aren't insanely broken like the top 3 are. That brings us to the OG 5-star DPS character and Batman LARPer, Diluc. I'll be running the standard Diluc Vape team with Zhongli as the 4th support slot. Yikes. 51 seconds. The old guard appears to be falling further and further behind. I tried this a few times with Kazuha instead of Zhongli as well, but for some reason it was just incredibly awkward to pull off, and since in no world can Diluc one cycle this Primo Geovishap, Zhongli ended up pulling ahead over the long run. Nonetheless, 51 seconds is still perfectly reasonable for doing 2 million damage, but it is still very far behind the previous times. Now for the insanely meta, broken, and overpowered top tier DPS character, Qiqi. That's right, what kind of I win to lose video would this be without main DPS Qiqi? So let's see how everyone's favorite off-banner 5-star pull performs. 56.9 seconds. This is astonishingly close to Diluc's 51-second time. However, you'll start to notice a pattern moving forward. Let's watch another popular DPS character to see if we can spot that pattern. And that popular DPS character is Xiao. Much to his chagrin, Mr. 89 dusted off his never again used Constellation 6 Xiao just for us to see how well he will do in this scenario.
Barbados, guide us.
Disappear! Here! Worthless! Worthless! Here! Solidify!
Teamwork is strength! I swear by my sword!
No conquering! Worthless! Worthless! Here!
59 seconds. Xiao isn't exactly known for a single target DPS, and this is definitely a single target DPS situation. Xiao's Constellation 6 is effectively useless here, and that is also where most of his DPS comes from. Well, for him to be on par with Qiqi is fine in my opinion, since Qiqi is quite the meta and overpowered monster as a main DPS. Anyway, let's do this with one more popular DPS character, Razor. Razor also ended up at around 59 seconds. Once these characters are over 50 or so seconds, they begin to heavily rely on the Primo Geovishap doing a second primordial shower to blow itself up in the face. From the primordial showers, the Primo Geovishap loses quite a lot of its HP, roughly 30% or so. At this point in the game, I believe the results here can be broken up into three main tiers. The first tier is the positively broken tier. Eula, Hu Tao, and Ganyu reside in this tier, and they can each output 2 million damage in a very short amount of time. These characters have insane multipliers and supports that just bolster those multipliers even more. It's worth noting that these three teams' upper threshold for damage output is around 2 million damage. After this initial 2 million damage, all three of their DPSs drop off the cliff. However, Ganyu probably has the best sustained DPS afterwards. Then there is the second tier of DPS characters, which I would describe as the moderately OP tier. Through my runs, the only two teams that fell into this tier are the Pure Pyro Klee plus Xiangling and Reverse Vape Xiangling. Klee's raw pyro damage is an absolute chad, and Xiangling's damage for how much screen time she takes is also absolutely insane. For the top 3 DPS characters, Eula, Hu Tao, and Ganyu, each of them do so much damage that the other 3 characters are only there to make them do more damage. In the case of these two teams, they both have 2 sources of DPS, Klee and Xiangling for the first one, and Childe and Xiangling for the second one. We are starting to see more and more of a trend towards just bolstering one insane DPS character with 3 supports over having multiple DPS characters on the same team. And finally, we have the third tier of DPS, what I'm calling the everyone else tier. If you notice, the times of all the teams after the previous 2 tiers are all pretty similar. For many of these prolonged fights, Kazuha falls behind Zhongli's constant buff uptime and shield for blowing up the Primo Geovishap. Most of these teams heavily relied on the Primo Geovishap blowing itself up twice. Prior to Ganyu, MiHoYo actually did a good job balancing their characters. It's worth noting that a few outliers include the Ningguang Geo team, all the physical damage teams, and the Keqing runs. The Ningguang team suffers from fighting the Primo Geovishap, who has 50% geo resistance. Meanwhile, all physical damage teams suffer a bit as well, due to the Primo Geovishap's 30% physical resistance. And finally, some of these runs, like the Keqing runs and Xiao run, were done before Kazuha's release, and also before the Freedom Sworn's release, which both can drastically improve some of these times. All in all, I thought this process was very interesting. I did my best to represent these characters on my account and to push them to their limits, and this was a compilation of the best results I could muster in a reasonable amount of time. I know I've missed a ton of characters in popular DPS cores, so let me know who you would have liked to see in this competition. Also, before you click off this video, I'm so close to 100,000 subscribers, so if you don't mind doing me a solid, smash that subscribe button. As always, thanks for watching. I appreciate every single one of you. This is I Went to Lose, signing out.
Don't blink.
This is order. Burst forth. Freeze. This moment will be frozen.
Incoming.
Gather.
Rain cutter. Rain outlines your fate. Power of the desert punch. Speed up cut to the chase.
Stabilize.
Take this. No, my sword. Let me weave you a verse. Eyes on me! With sword comes shadow. Hey! Don't look good.
Solidify.
Rain outlines your fate. Income, nowhere to hide.
Sousei no jutsu. Nankou furaku.
眠るの断罪の名に
はっはっすき焼く。すきやり。はっ。すきやり。ふっはっ。すきやり。岩山八九。ふっはっ。お嬢様のお天理チョーク。
許さない。
はっ。すきやり。酒。たっ。ふっ。すきやり。
震えなさい。姿を見せ。
はっ、天道万象。すきやり。はっ。たっ。すきやり。やっ。はっ。狂乱怒涛。雲が借りなくてみんなは俺が守れ。逃げられるかな。お嬢様の仰せ。隙を見せるのはほんの一瞬だ。せい。
断罪の名によ。
油断した。はっ。いやいやいや、みんながそばにいて。
夜の剣。
せい。はっ。そこ。ほっ。止水の矢。